Good morning, everyone. This is Vicki Hagberg from Northland Small Business Development Center, and I am here with Rovena Claxton, principal at North Shore Human Resources Consulting, LLC. And we are here today to talk about recruiting, selecting the best. So we hope that you learn a lot from this webinar and really get some good tips about hiring and that process of posting for jobs in this webinar today. First, we're going to talk a little bit about Northland Small Business Development Center and what we do in our community in our region. And so, Rovena, can you advance to the next slide?
Sure.
Thank you. Northland Small Business Development Center serves the 7 counties of northeastern Minnesota, and we have consultants in many communities, as well as the ability to work remotely with those that might be in more rural areas. And we provide no-cost confidential consulting for small businesses. So that could be around understanding your finances and cash flow projections, things like the HR topics that we're going to be covering today. We also have experts in marketing, folks that can help around buying or selling a business and starting up a business. So there's a lot of resources that we provide, and those are all at no cost to small businesses. So if you are not already a client and you're watching this, the way to access our consulting services is to go to our website, northlandsbdc.org, and you'll see a red button in the upper right-hand corner that says Request for Services. And there's a short form to fill out, and then you will get directed to your closest consultant who can help you out. I did want to note that at the end of this presentation today, for those that are attending live, there is an evaluation survey. It takes really less than a minute to complete. There's only a couple of questions. And so if you could look for that, it'll pop up in your browser and we'll give you a reminder at the end as well. So please be sure to fill out that evaluation today so we better know what kind of trainings you're looking for in the future and how we can continue to bring this information to you. So with that, Rovena, I will hand it over to you and you can enlighten us on some of these great topics around looking for candidates and hiring in this economy.
Okay, thank you, Vicki. It's a pleasure to be here with you all this morning, and thank you for coming. Just a bit about me before we get started. I've spent my career to this point in human resources, occupational safety and health, and in operations. My work has primarily been in manufacturing, and as an extreme difference, as well as healthcare. I was vice president for Memorial Blood Center of organization development for 10 years or so. My last role was at Children's Minnesota as an HR director. But additionally, my husband and I have owned a small business, a small retail business in the Twin City area for upwards of 12 years. So we know what hiring and retaining talent and those challenges are in a small business environment very well. So today we are going to talk about sourcing candidates. We're going to talk about selecting the right ones for your business. And then we're going to spend a touch of time on retaining talent and some of the things that you can do upfront when you hire folks to set them off on the right path to success, as well as to be able to retain them over time. So these are the agenda topics that we'll go through. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the expected trends in hiring, because as Vicki said, it is a really challenging environment right now. I know here in Grand Marais, which is where I'm based, every business, literally every business in town has hiring going on. So it's extremely competitive. We're going to talk a bit about job postings, how to write them, where, when, how to post them, what are some of the best places to post jobs. We're going to talk about other hiring sources that you may want to consider when your job postings don't work out, or additionally to your job postings so that you have multiple sources of talent. We'll talk about screening candidates, how you take in applications, why you want an application, talk a little bit about phone interviews and in-person interviews. And then we'll turn our attention to reference checks, background checks, testing, making offers, onboarding and retention basics, and then we'll close. So this is a lot to cover in the next 50 minutes or so, but we want to provide some time toward the end for questions as well. So as I said, finding excellent talent right now is very challenging. We as business owners honestly have to pay attention to some of the things that maybe we haven't had to worry about in the past. Maybe we haven't had to take the time to really write some fabulous job postings. We just, posted on the door and they came. But the current conditions do require that we rethink how we source talent, how we select them, and how we retain talent. There's less room for mistakes. And by mistakes, I say hiring someone that you shouldn't have or missing somebody that you should have hired, which is also a boo-boo on our part as business owners. So there's less room for those kinds of mistakes. But at the same time, there aren't any magic answers or magic websites or programs. But we will talk about the array of things you can do. And again, you're probably going to want to try multiple approaches. I like this slide and this quote because it kind of says it all right now. This is from the Society for Human Resource Management, which is the HR national and international organization of professionals. There is a turnover tsunami expected once this pandemic ends, and we're starting to see that. That was just last month that statement was made. And this is an interesting stat, more than half of the employees that were surveyed in North America plan to, by a study sponsored by the Human Resource Society, more than half of the employees that were surveyed plan to look for a new job in 2021, more than half, because people are no longer putting off their searches as they did during the shutdown. They were holding on to jobs if they happened to have one, and their employer didn't do layoffs, right? But now, once the pandemic is ending and people are starting to hire again, people are starting to look. They're also burnout. They're pandemic, tired, overburdened, with all the things that the public health crisis has brought to everyone. So that is why there is expected to be so much turnover. But it's going to require, as I said, a change in mindset for small business owners. And one of the things that I'm going to say is a conclusion after many years of experience here where we had available talent. We're going to have to adopt a different kind of mentality, I think, to really source and be able to attract talent in today's environment. We're going to have to adopt a marketer mentality to be competitive. We're going to have to think of ourselves instead of as employers, as marketers of our business. And how can we attract people to come to us for employment? So Vicki, I think you've got a poll here at this point.
I do, and I will launch the first poll for today. And so again, for those that may have joined us late, all of your answers are completely anonymous. So feel free to answer whether or not you're currently looking to hire additional employees at your business. So yes, we definitely need more help. Maybe if I found the right person. No, we're not currently looking to hire, or maybe later this year. And so we'll give that just a couple more seconds for people to answer, and then, all right, I will wrap up our quick engagement poll. And I mean, I think no question here, the results are that 100% of those who answered said, yep, we're looking for people. And that's probably part of why you're at this training today. But that is, I think, indicative of many of the small business clients that I have been working with over the past several months. All right.
Very good. Thank you, Vicki. So a little bit of statistics about our candidate pool. These are some late breaking stats around what's going on out in this environment. We have to think about the first point because it says that 70% of potential job candidates are passive talent. That means they're not actively, they're candidates because if they found the right job or someone approached them or they happen to see something on social media, they're not really actively out there searching the job sites every day, but if provided that opportunity, they'd be interested. So that's 70% of that candidate pool, not actively looking, but open to new opportunities. That means you have to go where they hang out. Organizations that, and this is another study, organizations that invest in employee branding are 3 times more likely to make a quality hire. You're already spending time on your websites. We have, through the Small Business Association, we have marketing talent available. That can be a very good, attractive, that branding attracts candidates as well. Here's something that I have found to be true in any environment, and that's the third point. Whether it's, a current, hiring need, that everybody's experiencing, or whether it's more of this so-called normal times in the past. Your top candidates are going to stay available for just 10 days before getting hired. And I think that's a little bit of a stretch, quite honestly. That's why in really competitive times, I've done such things as a recruiter as have job fairs and hire on the spot. Now, you don't exactly hire on the spot, but you get them to everybody they need to see, in terms of interviewing. You do everything about, telling them about the job, and then you give them a contingent offer. And so those are the kinds of process adaptations that we have to make to get that talent secured when they come to us and we know they're a good candidate. I say this because so many times as small business owners, we think about it and think about it and think about it. No, I want to see some more candidates just for comparison. We don't necessarily have the luxury to do that right now. And the last point is another one we'll pick up on in a minute. As far as marketing, 48% of businesses say that their top quality hires come from employee referrals. That means you really want to know, particularly your current employees, what was in their background. Did they have a particular kind of job they worked before that made them so successful working for you? Where did you source them? Or if you bought the business from someone else, where did they pull their application? What was their experience like before? So making sure you understand what spells success in your business, but also using that employee referral network is going to be vitally important. We have to also understand what our employees are looking for right now in this tsunami and when they're burnout and now getting back into the marketplace. They're certainly looking for better compensation and benefits. And, there is a minimum out there that you must pay. And part of that comes from your local, competitive market. There is a threshold you have to meet. And sometimes some small business owners are really upping that right now. I talked to someone here in the county that was paying an astronomical amount for a retail associated sales clerk. And I thought to myself, boy, that is really going to bring up the threshold in the community. So you need to be aware and understand what that threshold is to get people on board. There are other things you can do with your compensation. You can tier it. When people come to work for you, you can start them at a certain amount and then, tier them up pretty fast within 60 days or 90 days, give them increases so that you're paying based on performance. That's another option, but you have to have a competitive compensation level. People are looking for better work-life balance. That's been the theme and trend for a few years now. They want a work-life balance, especially up here in our rural communities. People have a life, they have other interests, outdoor interests and so forth. They want that balance. Sometimes you have people that work 2 or 3 jobs. And so schedules, I think we as business owners have to be somewhat adaptive. It takes more work, especially when you're working with part-time people, to sit down and pull a schedule together that can be kind of complicated when you're trying to manage around people's schedules and what they want to work. But it requires that we do some of that right now. People are looking for the opportunity to grow in today's environment. Remote work, I don't know that you have that option, but they may be coming to you because they want that better location. Perhaps they're trying to get out of the cities. So those are all factors in what candidates are looking for. I'm going to say something about the last one because it has surprised me over the years, especially when I've spent time in a nonprofit. People, young people in particular, will come out of school or maybe be going to school because they want to work for a not-for-profit, or they want to work for a for-profit that has a mission in the community. They're doing good work. They're making the community better. Or they're selling products that, make us all better, whether it's, art or other kinds of crafts. They want to be part of something meaningful. And that's what our young people are looking for today. So think about that as it relates to your business and your posting. And as I said, get strategic about your hiring process. One of the things that I work with my clients and those that are referred to me from the Small Business Association, the Development Center, is thinking about your true requirements. Sometimes we have put things in job postings that we have to ask ourselves, is having 2 years of experience really vital? Or is having a high school diploma or some college, is that really vital? So make sure that you don't exclude, make sure that you understand why you have a particular requirement in your spec, and ask yourself if I really need that. It is important to have a job description. I like very simple job descriptions, but we're going to talk in a minute about the difference between a job posting for your hiring process and a job description. Job description is something that you sit down, here's on paper, here's what day looks like. Here are the tasks, the specific things you'll be doing, how much of them you'll be doing each day, interacting with customers, cleaning the store, et cetera, et cetera. Here are the essential functions of the job. Here's how much lifting you'll be doing. There's exposure to any chemicals, et cetera. And then here are the requirements, whether it's experience or education, et cetera. So in that job description is something you pull out during your interview process to go through and say, let's talk about what a typical day is going to be like for you, so we don't have any, mistakes here. I mean, folks, I have quite literally had, when I was working in larger companies, managers that would hire people and they would show up, and after first break, they would be gone. I'm like, what the heck? What happened? Well, I didn't know the job was going to be like that. So, it seems really basic, but truly very important. One of the things as small business owners, we have a tendency, and I know my husband and I have had that experience of making bad hires. Folks, we all make bad hires. And so then what we do is we go, oh my gosh, I'm never going down that path again. I'm never hiring from that particular source again, or I'm not hiring that kind of person again, because that just didn't work out. Well, that can really limit our, our ability to hire the right people. Because if you adapt your hiring to your failures, you end up having some biases that you probably don't want to have, can get you in trouble. And, people are people. And, that person that you hired from that particular source, the next person from that particular source might be awesome. So it's important that we as business owners don't beat ourselves up with oh, that was just a miserable failure of a hire, and focus on, our processes and asking ourselves the right questions versus focusing on failures. Job descriptions versus job postings. I like, when I'm posting a job, to look around these social media sites or these internet posting sites. Indeed is a particularly good one for seeing the broad spectrum. I'm hiring a sales associate, or I'm working with a client to hire a sales associate or an administrative person. How are your competitors? Because you can certainly look at just your geographic area. How are your competitors in northern Minnesota or in the Duluth area posting their jobs? What are they saying? What are they offering in terms of pay? What are they saying about their work environment? A job posting describes your organization. And I was reading some articles about best recruitment practices, and a writer said, your job posting is where you describe your organization as if it were your company's dating profile. So, how are you going to appeal to job seekers? And we'll have a little bit more about that in just a minute. I also want to tell you, when you are posting a job, be really careful about the job title. I see many inflated job titles out there. Entrepreneur. Oh my gosh, entrepreneur, when it's really, a sales clerk or a grant writer or something like that. Let's talk about it. Let's focus on what it is, because you will get such a wide variety if you don't make it very specific. I've seen things like relationship manager when it's your front desk customer service person. So be careful about going down that pathway and being specific and using a title that's more well-known in the marketplace, in your competitive market. As I said, describing your job, your organization, as if it was a dating profile, that's different for many of us, because we say, oh my gosh, if I saw a job posting like, is this you? Are you all about people? Do you love doing X, Y, and Z? I would never respond to that, because it just sounded like such a sales pitch. But we have to be careful to remember that we're not advertising for ourselves. We're advertising for the public, a lot of whom are millennials, et cetera, that, like hearing that things, it sounds exciting. Being concise, but including all the essentials is what you want to do in a job posting. The job description, you're going to go through what a day is like, when you interview them, just to make sure, there's a common understanding of what this job is. But there are many experts that are recommending that you start out with an opening statement in that posting. Of course, you're going to have limited space, but that's why you only put in your absolute essential requirements, or must be able to work nights, or must be able to work weekend shifts. If that's an essential, you want to put that in the ad. But beyond that, you don't have to put everything about what they're going to be doing. But you want to appeal to, again, that marketing mentality, why your business is a great place to work. It gives back to the community. It works with your busy life. All of those statements, if you study some of the best ads out there, you're going to see that kind of appeal, or that kind of beginning to these ads. You may just shake your head over this, and I kind of do too, but these are the things that get people's attention. We're a fun group that works hard and plays hard. We're a small company, treats every member of our staff like a member of the family. We'll train you to move on to better things, but you won't want to leave. These are the kinds of things that are going in those job postings. But make sure.
There's a really interesting correlation in my mind, Rovena, between one of the stats you talked about earlier of 70% of candidates being passive talent, and how, a sales pitch like this, if they really connect to your sales pitch, what you're putting out there, your dating profile, and it intrigues them enough to engage, all of a sudden you've tapped this additional talent pool that if you're not going that extra mile, you might not get any candidates from that pool.
Right. Exactly right, Vicki. And, if you also study some of the ads of your competition, or just other ads in general on Indeed sites and so forth, you'll see the difference between that appeal and the really dry, must be able to X, Y, and Z. Those things can come off, comparatively speaking, so dry. But you're catching somebody that's out there on their Facebook after a long day that wasn't particularly exciting. And I really need to make a change here. That's what we're seeking in writing things, or considering different kinds of approaches to your postings. I think you have another poll at this point, Vicki, don't you?
Yeah, I do, in anticipation of our next slide. So for those that have posted for jobs before in the audience, how many places do you use to advertise your job posting? So we know some people might just put a help wanted sign in the window of their shop, right? That's kind of that traditional way of advertising that you're looking for someone, or maybe you just put it on your website in a careers section. But is it 1 to 2 additional websites or social media, 3 to 4 websites and social media? Are you putting it on multiple social media platforms? All right, so I'm gonna end the poll so we can keep moving forward. It looks like people in our group today are also aligned in that, they're putting it on 1 to 2, websites or platforms, or on their social media, or maybe some sort of combination thereof. They're not spending their time, their valuable time, putting it on every platform, but they're doing more than one.
Great, thank you. As far as job postings, there are so many options out there. And as the poll has shown, you all are trying multiple, 1 to 2. That is a good strategy. But there are so many options. I encourage you to expand your options when needed, and not overlook certain things. Of course, Minnesota Works is where, people that are unemployed are sent to in terms of, those recipients of unemployment benefits. So that's one source of talent. Of course, we have many of the sites such as Indeed, some of which are pay sites, but some of which, when you get a subscription or pay for a posting, you also get, some of them come with candidate systems, drop boxes where you can have your applications go into. So some of them you're paying not just to post, you're paying for some other things, but you want to be aware of that when you go out and look at those sites. Boreal is one that we have just in the Arrowhead, but it is a community website. And in Grand Marais and Cook County, for example, we have swap and shops online on Facebook that everybody goes to for everything. And people that have many, Facebook friends, we've got people on Facebook that have thousands of friends. And if they post your posting, share it with their network, bingo, you've just reached a lot of people. And I see that happening so frequently, certainly in our community. So Facebook is got some marvelous options for you. This over here on the right, that's Craigslist. And as I found when I was doing the research for this course or this class, a recruiter, this is a quote from a recruiter, virtually every person I've hired has come from Craigslist. Now, it's not beautiful. We're not used to seeing, a job ad necessarily on a site that looks like this. But again, those are, that is one of the myriad of options. I know my millennial son doesn't do anything without going to Craigslist. So, consider these sorts of options. Those of you who have technical schools in the area that, maybe produce technicians of some sort, healthcare workers, those are good places to source and to work with the placement officers. If I've had niche recruiting to do, and I'm trying to appeal to, a wide variety of audience here when I say this, if you can get a list of people that are licensed to do XYZ. In my case, it was licensed lab techs in the community, in the Minnesota area. You can get a mailing list, purchase that, and send out flyers, send out mailings. Sometimes that appeals to that passive candidate. But again, think about those passive candidates, not necessarily the ones that are going out and, very actively searching. So knowing your community is probably the best strategy. And the other thing I will say to you, we're going to talk about this here in a minute when we talk about job applications, be sure that you ask the candidate, the applicant, where they heard about you. Because going forward in the future, you're going to want that data. Where did those people that really did a good job for me, even if they're seasonal employees, where did they come from? How did they come to my doorstep? And so that's important information to collect. Is there anything else I need to say about this, Vicki, do you think?
I think the one thing I'll add is, some of these services really do try to target that passive group. And so one additional resource that isn't on the slide is Northforce, which is a recruiting tool for Northeastern Minnesota and Northwestern Wisconsin. And, once a potential candidate signs up and fills out their profile, Northforce will email them every time a job posting comes up that they think might match their skills. And even if it isn't a fit for that person, from personal experience, I might forward that on to my friend who actually does work in accounting or things like that. So I think from that perspective, it takes time to do multiple sources. But I think it's worth it, especially for those that, again, try to hit that passive group. And it depends on what level of employee you're looking for as well, right? You're probably more likely to be searching for someone in the semi-professional to professional realm on North Force versus, you know, a new cashier for a fast food restaurant. But, you know, there's a lot of options out there and a lot of resources, which is helpful as long as you know where to look.
Is North Force a paid site?
It is free to post jobs on North Force, and I'll put a link in the comments as well. And they do have, I would say, reasonably priced paid packages where they will either send you a group of resumes that you can reach out to those folks, or they can advertise your posting on social media or in their newsletter that they send out regularly. So it's a newer option. I think North Force was founded maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and there's areas where it has stronger presence versus others, but it can be another great resource.
Thank you, Vicki.
Yeah.
So there are other things to think about. You know, applications. When do you want to post jobs? The recruiting experts say the best time to post your job is on a Sunday evening or a Monday morning because of this trend. If you look at that trend line of when the most applications for employment will come in. If you are trying to contact folks to come in for interviews or to have a phone interview, the best time to call them or email them and get a response is 9 to 10 a.m. on weekdays. So, you know, for those who have studied this, you know, these trends and all of this data, it's something to think about as you really try to hone your recruitment strategy. Again, I'm going to reinforce the message that being diligent to responding to inquiries, there's nothing worse than applying for a job and not getting a thank you for applying. You know, we're going through applications right now. We'll be in touch if we'd like to talk with you. You know, or, you know, interviewing someone and not hearing back because, you know, that people are looking for a response. As I said, you can host a job fair, you can set aside a day. I always found this sort of practical from okay, I'm just going to spend the day interviewing, you know, and that way I'm not parceling it out, interrupting my days so often throughout a week, let's say. So, you know, you get creative with your thinking about how you proceed to interview folks. And then most of all, I can't say it enough, good candidates are perishable and they will be down the street to the next employer if you don't act quickly, if they're a good candidate. And so many times, especially if you're a new business owner, you kind of go, I'm not really sure, you know, you do everything that Vicki and I are talking about today to, you know, increase your odds of success, but you know, you can't ever be completely sure that someone's going to work out. Here are some other trends that I'm seeing. And this kind of goes in line with the number one way, and this is another stat for you. The number one way a person discovers a new job is through a friend, okay? That again is why we're talking about social media. That again is why we're talking about employee referrals. And I like employee referrals a lot for a lot of different reasons because, you know, I always talk to my employees about the fact that, you know, again, this is somebody you refer to me as somebody you're going to be working with. And you know these folks, you know what their values, their work ethic is, et cetera. And so there's kind of everything in it for them to refer you someone good. And again, you know, on social media, what you're doing is you're getting referrals from someone known in the community or to Facebook friends, and you're getting them based on that referring person's reputation. But in this case, you're getting applicants based on the referring employee. The employee can say, hey, here's what my day is like. Here's what I really like about this job, and so they're your best so-called marketers. Now, there are some things to think about with regard to that. And another stat, you can expand your talent pool by 10 times through your employees' networks, them posting on their Facebook 10 times. Just think about that. That's a lot. I like employee referral bonuses. You got to make them meaningful, but sometimes, you give a bonus after 30 days of employment, or after, you give one to an employee that's referred someone, after they've been with you for 60 days. There's a lot of things that you can do. The picture on the left is something that was posted on social media up here. And so I'm sharing it with you because, it's one option, $500 hiring bonus for hiring on with this organization. So there are some things you got to think about with regard to it. And again, that's making it more and more competitive for you to make sure you're doing something thoughtfully. I'm not going to do that because, or I want to think about doing that, but maybe doing it in a little different way. Again, that's knowing your community. Oh, I'm sorry. Got to go back. Technical difficulties there.
One thing I'd like to about the idea of employee referrals is they're not going to refer someone that they don't want to work with, right? Who's irresponsible, who's not going to show up for work, because it's going to reflect poorly on them. And as you mentioned earlier, the employee that does the referring, they're going to have to deal with that lack of accountability on a personal level at their job. And so I think it's a really interesting way to try to recruit.
Right. I like the option a lot, but you got to be thoughtful in how you set them up. And, anytime that you want assistance as a small business client of the Small Business Development Center here, I can help you with that through your consultant if you want to do a referral. You have to remember money is a short-term motivator. You can get referrals without paying referral bonuses for sure through that networking we've been talking about. But money, when you put money out there, it does tend to be a short-term motivator. It can get them in the door. Again, I like it in a lot of different situations, but when I do it, I will always say from now through the end of the month, I will put myself, because this is not something that is just like, evergreen that I'm going to do forever. So that's how I will set those up to be short term. But be careful in Minnesota when you do bonuses, you want to, and if you ever think about, now you can just say, okay, I'm going to do a $500 hiring bonus, and if they leave, they leave. But if you are setting up any sort of contingency for your referring employee, or that employee that they have to stay a certain amount of time, et cetera, or it's, or it will be deducted, you got to be really careful with any kind of deductions, especially as an employer. If you say, yeah, we did a hiring bonus, but they didn't meet the requirements of that bonus, so when they get their last check, I'm going to deduct it. You got to be super careful about that. And sometimes it's just better to anticipate kissing the money goodbye. But if you're going to do it, you have to have something in writing. Or I can tell you from personal experience, the Department of Labor representative in Duluth will call you and ask you why you took that deduction out. It's just like, uniforms or anything else, or a loan that so many times we get asked for as small business owners. So did they agree to it in writing? Did you get them to agree to that deduction in writing before accepting that hiring bonus check? If you've got it in writing before they accepted the check, you're good to go. So I always bear that in mind with any kind of deduction. So anyway, back to the value of employee applications.
Rovena, I want to do a quick time check and let you know we're at a little less than 15 minutes left in our allotted time.
Thank you.
As we are recording, we can go over a little bit if we need to, but I'd encourage folks, if you do have questions, be sure to ask them in the chat and we'll make sure they're answered in real time, as we probably won't have a lot left at the end for a question and answer period.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick note about employment applications. If you're not using them, I highly recommend that you start using them. I can help you write one. I would discourage you from getting them online, because the ones I've seen online are not necessarily things you can ask in this state and might get you in more trouble than you want to be in. But the value of an employment application is you can ask the exact information required. You ask it from an EEO perspective and a discrimination protection perspective. You can ask it consistently from every applicant. You can better compare applicants. You can get their authorization for a reference check on that form. When they sign the form, they're not only, and this is another point, the way I write the applications, they're not only authorizing reference checks of former employers, but they're also, you can indicate to them that if they falsify the application, it could be grounds for termination. And you would be surprised, perhaps, at the amount of that goes on, unfortunately. So it's a legal document. You do have to keep that in mind. And as I said, I'm always happy to help you through a referral. In the state of Minnesota, you may not ask about their criminal background on an application, and you may not ask, and this hasn't been signed into law yet, but it's made it through the House, and it, as anticipated, to be signed by Governor Walz very soon. And that is banning questions about people's previous salary. So instead of asking them, where'd you work before? How much did you make? What was your starting wage? What was your ending wage? You can't ask those things anymore. And that is because they're trying to minimize pay discrimination in the state. Okay, when you interview, and I'm going to go through this relatively quickly, simply because we've already talked a little bit about selecting the most important hiring requirements. Be clear about what you're looking for. Is work ethic important to you? Is skill important? The ability to work with other people, and customers, dependability. If all those things are important, which I suspect they are, and you could probably rank order them. But if they're important, then ask about them either in your phone interview, if you do phone interviewing, or in your sit-down interview. Ask them the questions that are targeted to those things versus just general. I mean, I've had managers ask, well, what's your favorite color? Or, just unrelated things to the job requirements. So we'll talk more about that in a minute, but you can also use that list of the most important things when you check the references. So if this particular quality is important, skill, then ask them, tell me from your previous experience how you would go about doing X, Y, and Z. If work ethic is important, tell me about what you're looking for. What's important to you in a job? What does having a good work ethic mean to you? These open-ended questions are so revealing. What do you consider to be a good day on the job? That's a very revealing question. Trust me, what people will say to that. Dependability, you can ask them about how they plan to get to work. Ability to get along with other people. again, asking people not necessarily theoretical questions, but situational questions about their previous experience. Tell me about a time when you had to deal with an angry customer. What was the situation? What did you do? And how did it end up? Tell me about a time when you had a disagreement with another employee, or you didn't agree with your supervisor. What was the situation? What did you do? And how did it end up? Those are all extremely revealing questions. So I'd write them down. I'd ask them of every candidate, but I'd target them to those most important elements of your job. Again, on the theme of thinking outside the box and being strategic about your hiring, this is a work opportunity checklist. These are things you can ask during the employment process, but I want to make you aware that there's a work opportunity tax credit, WOTC. It's been in place for a long time, a relatively long period of time. But if any of your applicants meet these criteria, which you can ask about after, certainly on the, I was convicted of a felony or released from prison for a felony, that's after an offer of employment has been made in this state. But, you know, those questions you may be able to get tax credits for. The other thing I want you to think about when you think about that candidate pool is, to me, a very, very attention-getting statistic, and that is, in 2018, people with criminal convictions comprised almost 1/3 of the adult working age population, and that percentage is growing. Sometimes people haven't been able to get jobs. I've had very good experience hiring people with former criminal records. They are so grateful that someone gives them a chance. So it's something to think about. I work with a consultant here locally that is reaching out to agencies that work with people with various disabilities. If you think about it, sometimes people that are physically or even emotionally impaired, have some mental, cognitive disabilities, may still be very, very good at routine tasks. And, you know, processing, packing, you know, packing groceries, packing supplies. Those are the things that if you work with these agencies and job coaches, they will help you think that through, because they want to get their candidates placed. So don't disregard some of these more creative, I would say, options. Job offers, to offer letter or not. You know, I like job offer letters because they capture in writing the basics. You can also include that at-will employment statement, and you can put in an expiration date for the offer. I have found that when the job market is really hot, I will get somebody that won't come back to me perhaps with an acceptance and say, well, I can tell you in a couple of weeks. Well, let's just don't wait forever. We got, you know, some other things. So, you know, this offer, you know, is, you know, good for X period of time. You know, you may have to do something like that. And just to remember, no background or drug testing can be completed in this state without a contingent offer of employment, nor can you ask about their criminal background. Okay, onboarding and retention basics. I'm going to run through these really quickly, because after you've hired someone, extended that offer, what do you want that first day to look like? Don't just be thankful they show up. You know, we have learned over the years, my husband and I, that we provide time for written training materials or for reading the handbook. We just pay them, you know, have them sit down in the office and read the material about expectations. Make them feel welcome. Again, this is back to that being the marketer in chief here. Welcome card. Maybe you have your other employees sign a welcome card, provide treats or lunch or a friendly note from you. That makes all the difference in the world in today's work environment. Enroll your coworkers or enroll their coworkers in the welcoming process. Let employees know up front, so-and-so is going to be starting to, on this date, I need you to help them do X, Y, and Z. That will engage them and help your employee to feel welcome. And don't rely exclusively on a buddy. Make sure that there's a well-defined role for your buddy training and, person that's doing the side-by-side, and make sure there's a well-defined with them for them. What's in it for them? Is it recognition? Is it, special bonus? Or is it just simply a thank you? There's that recognition element that makes so much difference. So, and making sure the work area is prepared. I have had situations where people come to work, they have no computer. They're supposed to be on the computer doing administrative skills or administrative work. So make sure everything's ready for them. And of course, you want to make sure that you go through the required paperwork. This is all, we'll make these things available to you, or you can anytime call me or call your consultant. These are the things you have to make sure you do on the first day. Your wage theft notice, your I-9s, and so forth. And so just in summary, before we close, this has all been about kind of changing our way of thinking as small business owners to adapt to a very competitive market, making sure you know your competition, making sure you know your market, and making sure you know the candidate that you're trying to appeal to. These things don't happen by accident anymore. We have to be strategic. But probably most important of anything, once we've gotten through this hiring process, is hanging on to your talent. And that requires that you treat those folks as very special people. It requires sometimes doing the things, understanding why they stay. I've had employers that have even done 2-week or 30-day stay interviews. You sit down and you talk to your employee about how are things going. It's very deliberate. How are things going? What do you like about their job? Is there anything that would cause you to leave? That's early warning signal, right? Because once you have them, and they're doing, the job you need them to do, you got to try to hang on to them as best you can. And so that means sometimes doing the hard things too, because there's nothing, I'll tell you from experience, there's nothing that will cause them to leave the door or, to walk out on you quicker than if there's somebody that's not pulling their weight and they're having to deal with it. Sometimes you as a business owner may not see it, but if they're having to do the job of 2 people, that will get them out the door too. So it's how they're treated, what their day in and day out experience is like, and if they have the support from you that they need. So with that, we have a couple of minutes for questions. Did we get any in the chat?
No, I don't think any came in or specific in the chat today. But I did want to reiterate, if you are interested in working with Rovena one-on-one to, help craft an example job posting, or to review your job descriptions, or to get, some help of what is that checklist of things that I need to have when I hire an employee. Maybe this is your first time hiring an employee, or you just haven't done a tune-up in a while and want to get that reviewed and make sure you're in compliance. Rovena is available to work with any small business in northeastern Minnesota that has been impacted by COVID-19. And so the way to access her services is through Northland Small Business Development Center. And so again, if you aren't a client, sign up on our website, northlandsbdc.org, or if you are already a client, ask that consultant that you're working with for a referral to Rovena, and we'll get you connected with her right away. Wonderful.
Very good.
Well, thanks so much, Rovena, for this really detailed training today. I think you covered some great points around hiring and job postings, and those steps towards getting and keeping a quality candidate. And one thing I'll give as a preview for those that might be watching is we are in the works on planning a couple of more trainings around these types of topics around retaining employees. So hopefully you don't have to go through this hiring process so frequently, and potentially around benefits and how that can be a tool to help you retain your employees at a way that is affordable for your business and the size that your business is right now. So thank you all for attending. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I will be sending out an email following this presentation tomorrow or early next week with the recording. And you can ask and get connected with Rovena through that way as well. So thank you all, and I hope you have a great Thursday.
Thank you all so much for coming.
Thanks, Rovena.